Whew. All right, welcome back. Each year, hundreds of men and women and children go missing in Jamaica. In recent times, increasing numbers of these cases have been a source of public outcry. So zooming in now to discuss this is the JCF's Senior Communications Strategist, Dennis Brooks. Welcome to Smile Jamaica. Dennis, good morning.
Morning, ladies. Happy to be with you. Always good to be on Smile.
Okay. Absolutely.
Lovely.
So where do we start?
Good
oh gosh,
question.
no, really. Dennis, it seems like every time I open my social media, it's almost guaranteed that I will see some notice that somebody has gone missing. I thought to myself this morning, is it that we are seeing an increase in missing persons, or is it that our access to the information has increased?
I think it's the latter. It's definitely not like an increase in persons who've gone missing. This year, at about late July or mid-July, there were about 850 persons who were reported missing. So we're on course for it to be a relatively low year. The average over the past 5 years is about 1,400 persons reported missing a year. But when we look back at 2018, it was about 2,200. 2019, it was 2,194, so about the same. But then in 2020, it was a reduction down to 1,615. Last year, it was 1,464. So you can get an idea that what is happening, I think, is that the communication of persons going missing is, I wouldn't say aggressive, but we've tried to be very on top of things in relation to reporting people who are missing so that we can get them back home or account for them. So I think the constabulary is very serious when it comes to getting that out on social media in particular.
So you're attributing the decrease in numbers to the efforts being employed by the force. Is that what you're saying, Dennis? Now that we're able to get the word out about folks who are missing, we're able to find them and bring them home. Is that what you're saying?
Not quite.
Okay.
In relation to Debbie's question about seeing it more on her social media, I think that the use of social media has been greater by the force. So that's why she's seeing it more on her timeline.
Right.
But it's not necessarily an increase in the number of people who are going missing, but an increased use of social media.
Right. So you spoke to a declining number, the numbers declining over the last couple of years, and I'm wondering what you would attribute, what the force would attribute that to. I was trying to see if there was a link between the fact that we're getting the word out more, even through social. More people can retweet. I've seen, through the efforts of Twitter, people be found, which is great. But to what do you attribute the declining numbers of folks who you say are going missing, from 2,000 that you mentioned now to 1,400 plus?
I would say it's a combination of things. I think that, quite frankly, yes, the increased sensitization around missing persons, if we go back as far back as, creating of the Ananda alert system and having a very aggressive system of reporting, what we now have is a greater likelihood that when somebody is reported missing, that they will give an account of themselves very quickly. Also, when we look at some of the factors that account for people to go missing, I think that we are also trying to deal with that beforehand, and that's not just a JCF thing, but I think it's a societal thing that many people go missing and come home shortly thereafter because of problems at home, etc. So I think that maybe we've been working on that. Also, I think that during the pandemic, there was a bit of a reduction because of just a lack of ability for people to just get up and leave, I think. So we maybe had a little bit of a benefit where that was concerned.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't comment too much on that because I think that we'd really need to look into that pandemic effect and how that affected us positively or negatively.
Yeah. When we look at the numbers, Dennis, the questions here on my run ask about the percentage of women and the percentage of men, when we look at, who go missing more, tell us who, from the numbers that you have identified, would come up as missing most.
Definitely, women and girls go missing far more than men do. They account for a far larger percentage of the population. Um, I, funny enough, of all the statistics, I can't put my finger on that one. But when we look at, for instance, this year, in terms of the percentage of people who go missing and return, 65% of people who go missing have returned or been accounted for since the start of the year. But of the people who go missing, if we look at it by gender, of the men who go missing, 58% return. Of the women who go missing, return. And that's very similar when we look at girls and boys. 70% of girls return versus 62% of boys. And so, generally speaking, it is fairly high. It's not as high as it was maybe 5 years ago. 85% of persons who went missing in 2018 returned. 75% of persons who went missing in 2020 returned. So at present, I mean, we're not at the end of the year, but we're at 65% at this point in the year. As I said, these statistics are up to about mid-July. What I would say, though, is that I would encourage persons to tell the police, let the police know. I mean, we have a mechanism where we actually go and call and follow up and try to account for those persons who've returned. But many times the challenge is that persons don't report someone returned. They will report you missing, but they don't report your return. Sometimes the circumstances by which you went missing is a little bit embarrassing to people, and so and this is across ages. But one thing that I think we should really look at, it's a major source of concern, is when we look at those who are reported dead once they go missing. And those numbers are quite chilling, because 88% of persons who are reported missing and then are confirmed dead, 88% are men. That means about 9 out of every 10 men who go missing don't come back. 1 out of every 10 women or girls who go missing don't come back. They're confirmed dead. And so it's almost when a man goes missing, you immediately begin a murder investigation, because the likelihood of him returning is not high. That's a very serious concern, because we're talking about probability. If you report your male friend, your male relative, your loved one missing, what's the probability that he is already a corpse by the time you report him missing? Or what's the probability, or what's the window of opportunity that we have to save him from becoming murdered? Those are serious conversations that I think we need to have.
That's very interesting insight, Dennis. When you drill down more on that, what do you glean from that? Is it usually...
Well, good question. What I would say is that men and women, boys and girls, go missing for very different reasons. So in your adolescence, you'll go missing because maybe you ran away, you had an argument with your parents, you stayed out late, and you weren't sure how to come back, or you some kind of degradation in terms of family structure. When we look at adults, women sometimes will be reported missing because they're frustrated with a situation, sometimes at home. Maybe it's a situation of domestic violence, maybe, left and not accounted for. But men tend to not run away in Jamaica. Men tend to not disappear for the weekend. And so when a man in Jamaica has to be reported missing, it's usually not good news.
Wow.
So let me ask you. So we've laid all of this out to bear. The JCF has come under a lot of fire from folks who are saying, You know, there are corners of the society who are saying you're not doing enough where missing persons are concerned, especially where young ladies are concerned. We saw the outrage the other day with Donna Lee. We saw the poll yesterday that says a majority of Jamaicans are not trusting of the police. I don't think you're doing enough. How do you respond in the face of all of this? Because based on what you're saying, you folks are digging and you're recording and you know what's happening. So how do you respond to the leveling of criticism that it's not enough?
I would say it in two ways. Perception is often different from reality. So people's perception of what is happening, it does not often match the reality of what is happening on the ground. It is something that, you know, if one would say then, well, then you have to do more in perception management, then you have to be careful, because then those same persons will say that we're seeing too much PR from the JCF, and you're a law enforcement agency, not a PR agency. So, I mean, what's the right balance of PR and letting people know what we're doing, or strategic placement of communication to let people know what you're doing? But at the same time, we have to bear in mind that when you report someone missing, you report your child missing, you report your husband or your brother or your father missing, I don't know any loved one who's going to be satisfied with the state of things until that person is returned home. I don't know anyone who's going to be properly saying, yeah, I mean, police did all they could. I mean, when people are whispering in your ear and telling you, oh, why didn't they do this? Or why didn't do that? Or here in America, they would do this. Or here in Holland, they would do that. I mean, there's always something else that somebody is going to feel could have been done. And so, I mean, it's kind of hard to ask people that question. But what I have seen from investigators who look into missing persons, I've seen, I mean, these are the same investigators who investigate murder, robbery, rape, everything. We only have a finite number of detectives within the Jamaica Constabulary Force. What I would say is that everyone has a responsibility. People go missing, and some of them are unaccounted for, and the unaccounted for are unaccounted for because people maybe see them and not talk. I remember a case of...
Dennis, we're getting the wrap, you know, so you have to give me the 30 seconds before they fling me out of the building.
What I would say is the Jamaica Constabulary Force is in a constant and continuous process of transformation. People are not always going to be satisfied, and people will express frustration at different points depending what is the hot topic of the day. But I can assure you that a great deal of work goes into the investigation of missing persons, because we investigate every single one with passion and determination. It's not a story for us. It is a case and a family that needs to come home.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it this morning. JCF's Senior Communications Strategist, Dennis Brooks.